Self-sabotage. We've all done it at some point, but why do we do this? Why do we fail ahead of time? Why do we deter our own selves from accomplishing the things that we want to accomplish? Well, in this video, I will explain why, and I will also give you 3 signs that you're engaging in self-sabotage. And what's really interesting is that oftentimes when people are engaging in self-sabotage, it's almost impossible for them to see that they're engaging in their own self-sabotage. So these 3 signs will be super important to know, to look out for, so that you will know when you are engaging in self-sabotage and impeding your own progress and your own ability to succeed in the goals that you set for yourself. All right, if you're new here, my name is Olisa. I'm a leadership and high performance coach. I have a graduate degree in psychology from Harvard, and I'm happy to have you here. If you haven't subscribed yet, I invite you to subscribe. I make videos like this every week, and if you're able to share this video, that would be great too, because there's lots of people that are struggling with self-sabotage right now that could really benefit from a video like this. Okay, so imagine that you set a goal for yourself and it's something you really want and you're really excited to strive towards this goal. You feel confident, but then, maybe a week, maybe even a day later, you're like, nah, I was silly when I set that goal. I probably shouldn't go for it. I have reasons A, B, and C of why I shouldn't do this. And it feels very logical to not go towards this goal. This might be self-sabotage, and in the moment, all of your reasons A, B, C, are gonna seem really, really good reasons. They're gonna seem like excellent reasons of why you shouldn't strive towards your goal anymore. And this is why self-sabotage is so difficult to see within ourselves, is because once we enter that zone of self-doubt, we essentially believe our own stories of why we can't do something. So you might wonder, why do we do this? Well, we actually have a really good reason for engaging in self-sabotage. In psychology, we call this self-handicapping. And essentially, self-handicapping is like an insurance policy against looking like a fool in front of colleagues, coworkers, your family, friends, etc. We need people around us to perceive us as competent and able and to show us respect. And we also need to perceive ourselves as competent and able. If we strive towards a goal and we fail in accomplishing that goal, we have the risk of seeming like less competent and less able to ourselves and others. And our human brain doesn't like that. It doesn't like that people might not see us as well as we want them to see us. Therefore, in order to mitigate this risk, our mind comes up with lots of great excuses of why we shouldn't strive towards a certain goal. And that is essentially self-sabotage. It is an insurance policy against failure. The issue is that oftentimes self-sabotage is a very short-term technique. It is a technique for short-term gain in making us save face around people around us who might potentially perceive us as a failure if we were unable to achieve our goal. But if we actually have a goal that's really important to us and we've always wanted to accomplish in our lives, then self-sabotage is a poor technique. We need to be able to take that long-term perspective to see that small failures along the way will be worth it to accomplish the goal in the long run. So now you may think, well, that sounds great. I want to think long term. I want to think about my future self and all the goals that I want to accomplish in my life. I want to strive towards long-term results and actually live according to my values. Well, that's all well and good. But in the moment, it can actually be quite difficult because oftentimes, even though we are focused on long-term success and really living true to our goals, we might get distracted by thoughts and feelings that come along that make us feel very uncomfortable in the moment and make us want to quit because we are perceiving a high amount of risk of failure. And so it really encourages us to engage in this self-sabotaging. So one of the best ways to overcome self-sabotaging is to really be able to label it for what it is. So a lot of times what happens is we have a thought that comes into our mind like, oh, I'm just not good enough to do this. And in the moment, it feels like super true. It feels like I am objectively not good enough to do this. But in actuality, this is our sneaky way of self-sabotaging ourselves. Because if we think that we're not good enough to do something, then we'll stop striving towards that goal and we will fail ahead of time. We will essentially stop engaging in the pursuit of that goal and therefore not have to deal with the actual follow-through, which would show to us whether we would have been successful or if we would have been unsuccessful at achieving that goal. So I'm going to give you the top 3 common signs that you're engaging in self-sabotage. And I really think that they're going to be pretty unexpected because I think most people don't consider these signs of self-sabotage, but they are. And when you know them, you're going to be able to look out for them. So when they come along and you kind of give yourself that excuse in your mind, you will be able to say, oh, that's not actually true. That's just normal self-sabotage. Like, that's my little insurance policy trying to protect me from failure. It's very cute and good, but I'm not going to listen to it. And that way, you'll be able to kind of diminish the power of the self-sabotage and you'll be able to strive towards the great things that you want to accomplish. Okay, so the signs that you're engaging in self-sabotage. Number 1 is you overcommit. This is just like being crazy busy. If you're someone that says that you're busy like numerous times a day, then that's a really good sign that you're engaging in self-sabotage, because committing to lots of kind of everyday in the moment tasks that really fill up your schedule, like meetings, and having to kind of rush from one thing to another, actually keeps you so busy, keeps you so in kind of the chaos of everyday life that you don't have to engage in the long-term goal. And you have this like wonderful reason why. You're just too busy. And of course you would accomplish the things that you want to accomplish if you weren't so busy. And therefore you're able to protect your own ego that way, and you're not having to put yourself out there and potentially fail and deal with the repercussions of that. You just kind of can stay busy and still feel really good about yourself because you know that if you wanted to, you could accomplish your goal, right? So be careful of this one. This is something that a lot of us engage in, and it's really this busyness trap. It protects you from having to fail. And the only way to overcome this fear of failure is to actually fail and to fail again. And this is essentially exposure therapy. You need to be able to fail and deal with the emotional repercussions of that, and then you'll see that it's actually not as bad as you thought it was. And after many kind of attempts at this, you will essentially be inoculated against kind of those difficult feelings of failure, and you'll be able to kind of engage in goal pursuit in a more objective way. Okay, number 2 is similar to the first one, and this is you procrastinate. And so procrastination is really, really interesting. I think it's a very interesting psychological phenomenon, and I think there's more to it than people think. So imagine that you have something due. It's important. It's going to be evaluated, and you want to do a good job. Like, you don't want to fail, because if you fail, you will think poorly of yourself, and you think others will think poorly of you. And so you want to make sure that you protect yourself against failure. But you have a very interesting way of doing this. So if you procrastinate towards the last minute and you just kind of like get this task done really quickly towards the end, there's like this big rush, then you're always able to say, you know, if I had had more time, I would have done a better job. Like, I got this done in like 2 hours. Like, of course that it's not my best work, but hey, I got it done. You see what's happening here? Like, you're able to basically blame any failure on the procrastination, on the lack of time, and therefore you protect yourself from really being completely exposed as if you had put in your full effort. Because if you had put in your full effort, then you would have been able to evaluate yourself based on a full effort. You would have been able to say, this was my full effort. This is who I am. I put that into the task, and this is how the result was. And that's kind of scary. So if you procrastinate, you're able to protect your own ego and therefore not have to be evaluated in kind of that truest sense. It's actually quite genius if you think about it. Okay, and the last sign that you may be self-sabotaging is that you blame others or you blame your environment. So this is a great way of also protecting yourself, because if you're able to blame others for your lack of ability to strive for your goals, or you're able to blame your environment, then you can protect yourself from having to evaluate yourself as someone who is maybe scared or someone who has the potential to fail, which is scary. And so if you can kind of shift your focus on others or to your environment, oftentimes this can kind of result in maybe you really narrowing in on like a really annoying coworker, or like narrowing in on a specific aspect of your job that is just so bothersome or annoying that you often talk about it. And it might seem very real to you in that moment, but in actuality, it's this wonderful protection mechanism that you created for yourself to not have to evaluate your own self and not have to evaluate your own kind of capacity. And if you're able to kind of blame the environment or blame others, you can then protect yourself from potential failure. And failure is scary, and we don't actually want to think of ourselves as incompetent, because that's kind of like a danger to the ego. And the issue with this is that obviously blaming others or the environment kind of gets you stuck. You're never able to kind of move forward, because oftentimes it's very difficult to change others, and sometimes it can be difficult to change your environment. And what often happens is that you can also kind of engage in a cycle of avoidance. So you might avoid certain tasks or certain people, and avoidance typically leads to more avoidance. So then you're kind of feeling like maybe your work or your life isn't really in your own control. And that can feel really bad to your mind. Like psychologically, we hate feeling out of control. This coping mechanism is actually probably the poorest, because it leads to a lot of psychological distress. Even though you're trying to avoid seeing yourself as a failure, you are essentially engaging in a process that leads you to perceive less autonomy, which means that you perceive your life as less in your control, and that can make you feel really, really bad. And actually, there's a term in psychology that's called learned helplessness, and it's highly correlated with depression. So essentially, if you kind of see your world as not in your own control, your work as not in your own control, it can actually lead to potential depression. Okay, so if you see yourself in any of these three signs, please don't judge yourself. This is not meant to be like a judgmental video. We all engage in this to a certain level. Like, this is just what it is to be human. But if you do see yourself in some of these, start to try to kind of question it. Be like, is this really for real? Like, is this an accurate representation that I'm creating in my mind? Or is this simply self-sabotage? And if you're able to label that as like, oh, hey, look, it's self-sabotage again, my normal human mind coming in to try to protect me in the short term, then you might be able to move past these coping mechanisms and actually start striving towards the goal that you've always wanted. And it's important to understand that we as humans have many protective aspects in our psychology to protect us from risk. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't strive toward our goals. It just means that we have a human brain that has a negativity bias and doesn't like to expend energy when it doesn't need to. You can still keep going toward your goal, and it doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to accomplish it. It just means you have a normal human brain that can be a little bit lazy and a little bit negative. And so I hope that this was a helpful video, and I'm going to link some more resources below for you to check out. And I invite you to watch some of my other videos. I have many videos that talk about kind of this negativity bias, or kind of just the way that motivation works in our psychology. All right, I will see you all next week with another video. Take care, and best of luck overcoming your self-sabotage.